Hello everyone. Today we will talk about international usability testing, how to understand your users. And let me introduce myself. My name is Kateryna Abzyatova. I am a senior manual QA at Hilton company. And I have more than 10 years of experience working as a manual QA engineer and also had ability to test desktop, mobile, web applications and spent several years on localization testing too. So the purpose of my presentation is to explain why usability testing is important, and especially when we have international users. And I divided my presentation into several parts. First, we will talk about what is usability, the usability testing activities, just maybe go briefly through this section to be on the same page for everyone who can be not familiarized with such techniques. And then we will start thinking about how to learn about the international users. We'll focus on understanding cultural differences, think about how to plan for international testing. We'll have short summary and I'll answer any questions at the end. So what is usability? And before we go into the definition, I would like to share several interesting cases and studies regarding importance of the usability testing and usability at all to the business. So I found an article in ngh.com which called 95% of all returned gadgets still work, and Americans don't read manuals. And really a huge amount of returned products, and from this amount, only 5% were truly broken. And according to studies, 68% aren't meeting customer expectation or they are too confusing to use. Rest 27 was returned just for customer regrets, but anyway, 68 is a really huge amount that it was not broken. The customer just not realized how to use it. So these products don't seem to work for them. And it's mean not only lost time to customers, it's also lost sales for companies. So when the customer returned it. So, and in a lot of cases, usability can be a really critical success factor for a lot of business, for application, for devices. And the second case, it's more famous one about Hilton's alarm clock that the hotels often face with such problem that guests cannot figure out how to set the alarm. And the Hilton's management tried to find alarm on the market. They investigate and test for usability more than 100 devices and realized that it still failed their usability criteria. And then they realized to develop their own alarm. So, unfortunately, on the pictures, it's not possible to read the labels, but it's the button on the front, it just set alarm, make some, for example, changes, confirm. You can see the time and alarm time at the same time on the screen, and different options for sound. So it looks like more obvious than other versions that they're looking for. And also, I can say that it's totally ideal one because I also found one article where I discussed where it was criticized for usability, this alarm clock, that it may be much better, but anyway, it's also a good example where where clearly intuitive, understandable interface can be important for the users. And next, we will talk about some fundamental concepts for usability evaluation. We divide it in three parts. It's usability, user experience, and accessibility. So usability is more focused on direct interaction between user and application. And user experience, it focused for the some actions. So what is before this interaction, what is after this interaction, during interaction, but it's more content like emotions, beliefs, preferences for the user. It can It even can be a really critical aspect for the entertainment industries, and it's more related to the whole package concept. Accessibility is also direct direction, like interaction between user and application. But here we focus more on understanding problems related to some accessibility barriers. And accessibility can be very important when our application is designed for general public, when it's using it will be using in different countries and following standards according sometimes it need to follow the standards or according some laws in countries or states where you need to support accessibility. But we will focus more on usability in our presentation. So what is usability? This is like the best known definition from International Organization for Standardization, that usability is the extent to which a product can be used by specified users to achieve specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. What does it mean? So in a specified users, it means that we will test not for all users, not for everyone, so we will not ask your parents to test it if they are not your target group. That means that we need to perform our usability testing for people for whom the product is designed. The specified goals mean that we are not just saying, okay, let's test something and tell your, for example, your opinion about our application. So we will provide some specified tasks to achieve some goals, but these goals should be totally the same as its goals for our target audience. This means that our product goals need to represent the customer's goals. Specified context of use, it means the product has to be designed to work in the environment in which the users will use it. So it's also very important to not test it in other ways, how they accept the users will do this in future. And the next part is still the same definition, but here we would like to focus more on the ways how to evaluate our usability. It's like key parameters, measures of usability is effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. What does it mean? That effectiveness is the possibility to finish our planned tasks, and efficiency is how quickly and easy we can do it. And satisfaction, of course, is like maybe how fun, how pleasant it for us. Just for example, if we use application to book a hotel or and effectiveness is it would be, for example, easy steps to do it, possible to book, and so we can reach our goals. And efficiency is that we can do it quickly, we can quickly and easy, for example, cancel our booking. And satisfaction is how professional looks the design, how fun, how beautiful, how is it really pleasure for us to use this. So this is like main ways of measures of usability. And we have one more. It's from well-known usability consultant who present their like easy to remember dimensions of the usability. For example, like 5 E's. It's effective, that we can complete our task. It's efficient, how quickly we can do it. It's engaging, how well the interface draws the users into the interaction, and how pleasant. So it's almost the same as satisfaction. And error tolerant, it's also that can we help prevent errors for the users, or can the user recover from mistake that can happen, for example. And easy to learn, how product supports, for example, how intuitive it to understand. Is it easy to find the way how to reach this goal and how to resolve many, for example, any task. Usability testing activities, we will discuss what techniques usually used to conduct this. And for usability evaluation, we usually use reviews, testing, and surveys. Like 3 options. And for usability reviews, we have 3 types. First one, this is informal. It's more like opinion based. We can involve some people to make them task. We can observe. It can be even our personal experience. We use some common sense. We just observe their behavior. It's how to say, more informal part. The expert type, it's more experience based. So it's more experience based, and here usually the experts may test this application, check usability by their own, using their experience from in this area. It can be, for example, a UX designer who know maybe best practice, who had maybe experience to design similar applications, they know the advantages, disadvantages, what is clear, what is not, so they provide their expert thoughts about it. And heuristic evaluation, it's more like checklist of common rules, which we also need to apply to check through our application. Is it much? Is it comfortable? We can say that it can be a good addition to other testing, because if the system is complex, it can be not enough just heuristic evaluation for usability review. And just as example, for example, visibility of the system status, it's a possible rule for heuristic evaluation. That's mean that we need to provide feedback for the customer, that the customer needs to understand what the system is doing right now, what is going on, and give appropriate feedback for the user. So it can be, for example, confirmation messages when we're doing something. It can be loading or progress bars, for example, when we upload something. It can be even light near the camera. They're notifying us that the camera is turned on. That's mean and we know that it's working. So this is the way of visibility of system status. And there is a big list of other checks, but you need to familiarize it if you would like to learn more about usability. We have usability testing approach. It's the second part of evaluations. We start with review, and the next one is testing. So it also divided into the 3 parts. It can be prepare test, conduct test sessions, and communicate result. So for prepare test, we're creating usability test plan. It's like short description of purpose of our test, maybe ways how to measure our usability. Maybe we have our objective to show even for our stakeholders some critical usability problems. It also can be part of our test plan object. Then we create test scripts, maybe some procedures which describe a sequence of actions, maybe some brief instructions, and then we create test tasks. Maybe exactly there are some goals which customer needs to reach during using our application. And it's specified by moderator, for example, and we have some limited time session to do these tasks. And next, for preparation for test, we need to think about test location. So where we need to conduct this testing, it can be test lab, so the room where you have ability to observe how the users interact with your application, but you're staying in a different room. But you have, for example, glass wall and ability to see what they do. And or it can be your office. It can be even if your participants take it from home, it's also a usability test location. So it can be totally any place which can be more comfortable for you. It depends. Do you have money to rent some test labs? Do you have enough budget for this? Or if possible to just for example, ask customers to visit your office, and it's also okay. The second part is conduct test sessions. It's mean that we make some preparation for sessions, some brief instructions. We have take this that the users start. For example, resolving these tasks. We have moderator, for example, looking on this. And then we also able to do some post-session interview. So ask what was good, what was not good in the application, with which problem user can face, and something like this. And the last one is communicate results. So first we need, after conducting the session, we need to collect and analyze what we have, for example, our results. And then we need to classify, categorize it, rate, make some recommendations for improvements, create usability test report, communicate to stakeholders, involve them in results if possible, because maybe sometimes communication with stakeholders can be the most hardest part, because even from my experience, it's usually you need to explain a lot of maybe obvious for QAs test principles. For example, that we need to start testing as early as possible. So sometimes that exhausting testing is not that it's totally not possible, except of trivial cases, of course, and a lot of the ways where your customers or clients may not understand, or stakeholders, for example, don't like to take into account how usability can be important. And sometimes you need to prove them, explain, and say, okay, it can be really critical one, just take a look, and can influence on the how much your business income will have, because it's totally influence on your sales too. And it was about testing approach. And the third one, it was user surveys. So for user surveys, it's also a great option where we can it's the way how to measure user satisfaction. We can focus on any aspects for this. We can involve a lot of participants. It's not expensive. You can send survey for a lot of people, not only for the users who already take some usability testing sessions. For example, in your office, it can be for a lot of people who can just try if it's a web application from their home and answer on your survey. And that's great that it's not expensive, can be, especially when you're limited in your budget, but we're usually limited. So, how to say, take into account such option. And the best way, how to say, the best part that we have a lot of standardized questionnaires which is ready. For example, system usability scale, software usability measurement inventory, website analysis and measurement inventory. So they may help you to specify measurement of usability, which you can use as completion criteria. And learning about your international users, it's also very important. It's even important to learn your any users, but for international, it can be a really challenge, just because it's a good quote that know your user because he is not you. And it's definitely very hard to understand. We usually take a look on the application and said, oh, it's clear how to use it. Is it obvious that we need to click on this button and maybe search here? But it may be not obvious for other users because they're really not you. And it's even if you think that, so why it's important to do this, because the user may behave totally not how you think they will behave, and even not totally how they think they will behave. using like your application. So that's why important to take a look how they do it, with which problem they face. Maybe you see that someone, for example, clicking, but starting become mad during working, or even shouting on your website because they can't find the way how to resolve the task and feel very uncomfortable. So it's really important part. And if we're starting to learn about how we can do it, we can create personas for our international users. It's almost totally the same as create personas for other users. We can do it creating a strategy for our application. And here we can take into account, just imagine any person that is a real person. And it can be your potential user, so your target group. Who is these people? So it can be gender, monthly income, education background, location, some apps which they use, smartphone habits. So, for example, we have a male. His name is Michael. You also can give a name for your personas. He have $3,000 monthly income. His education background. He has a master degree in economic. He live in a big city, for example, not in a village, because it can be different also. They have similar apps which you propose to the market. He also used them. And for example, about his smartphone habits, he check it every 5 minutes, so or maybe more than 100 times per day. We can take it into account which device they use. It can be some maybe latest iPhone, or it can be some maybe not latest one, Android, or we can also select some brands if needed. It depends on which application we will test. And the second part of create personas, so we can think how many personas do we need. And for example, if we can have several personas, if we are talking about customers from our country, but for international users, we need to think about, we need select maybe several personas for a language group, or we can divide it by, for example, single country or a group of countries if we are limited with time and budget again. So we can combine it. For example, Latin America, some Spanish speaking countries, Chinese speaking countries or cultures. So they can share a common language or common culture. The one more option is we need to think about character set. For example, even in several languages, it can be several versions of language, several dialects, or the same. Regarding character, in Chinese we have traditional Chinese characters and simplified. So from my experience, when we test localization, our management decide to make both or versions of the application for Chinese market, that in simplified character and in traditional too. So reading capabilities and preferences is one more option. That's mean that we need to think, do we need to use how users read? Usually it's right to left, left to right orientation. And from my experience, also faced with a situation where the big application, famous application, came into market already in a production 2 years, for example, and they start to build options for right to left only after several years. So, but if you're just starting your project from scratch and you already know that you will go to work in a different countries, so just think right away that it's very important that some countries is not they not reading. It's not would be good for them when you have a left-right orientation. So just build this option to switch orientation right away if possible. The second one is some specific cultural characteristics which also may impact international personas. It's like learning styles. It's for example, how people do they learn from some authorities, if they try to avoid some instructions or no. So different styles of learning can influence some reading patterns. may influence. For example, is that some cultural expectation of amount of information which should be provided, some long text, short text, maybe some icons, some supporting, some reading orientation again. So for right to left, left to right. The third part is the trust. And is this, for example, it can be a risk-taking culture or no? How easy to build the trust with your customer? So maybe do they like to try a new experience or better follow some practice of experience where they already know? Relationships. It's again how hard or how easy to build relationships with your customer, because so sometimes it's oriented for some long term maybe, or you need to provide more information if needed. Maybe, for example, do you need to establish this relationship before start or no? And the last one is mistakes, or it's also sometimes it's called like phase. It's like option where when the user make a mistake, who do they blame? Is themselves or the product? It's also important when we're conducting some usability testing is to explain for the user, especially for international user, that every time that you face this problem, that you can't resolve something, it doesn't mean that the user is, they may feel themselves stupid, uncomfortable, that they can't find the way to resolve the task. And in this case, we need exactly to explain that this is only usability problem, so nothing wrong with you. And sometimes when they already have, how they will share experience with friends about your application, if they feel how comfortable or not when they make some mistakes or can't resolve tasks. So it also may influence this, like taking into account when we build our international personas. The understanding cultural differences. This cultural difference may influence a lot of the way how people will communicate, interact with our application. And one of the maybe a little bit older study about country-specific levels of trust of others and how they influence on internet shopping characteristics. Yes, and according to the Western like studies, that 5% of Peruvians trust each other, 36 of people in the United States trust each other, 44 people from the United Kingdom trust each other, and 65% of Norwegians trust each other. That means that when you are selling something, for example, that means that a lot of people would be much more open and will trust your application much more, for example, in Norwegian countries. But if you would like to have a deal with the customers from countries where this level of trust to other is low, it's better to add more proofs, maybe more guarantees on your site why it's more why it's safe to make some orders from your website. One more option is information architecture. It's for us sometimes it's very obvious how the site should look like with the usability criteria we can apply. But for example, in USA, in Western Europe, we prefer to have a lot of categories of site as a separate pages. But for example, in Chinese, it's a screenshot of one of the popular site just to show you an example that how information can be structured, a lot of links together on the same page, and it appeared just because of not in all regions it was the fast internet, and a lot of big portals may store the information like this, just a huge amount of links where they open each links in new tab. For example, it can be totally different information architecture from what is common for our culture. So we maybe need taking into account this, think about maybe to ask designers from the local vendors to help us build maybe architecture related to some regions and just take a look. Is it looks like more will, or the customers will feel more trust looking to our application or no? So what we need to change their opinion. And second option is technology adaptation. That means that we can't just make something and sell it in all countries just because, for example, it's in several samples with German, with Indian users and their washing machines. Of course, they will have different labels, different terminology. They will even wash maybe different fabrics. So it also may influence on the usability, how we create this some controls, some options, and other. And also, for example, mobile attraction design for low literacy cultures in Africa. So maybe if your application will be used in a lot of countries, maybe for some regions, we can think about, do really all people can read text? Maybe we need to replace it with something. It's really based on some culture, some situation for where you develop, and it's important to understand who is this user, not just make it similar to English or US option. We need to adapt exactly for each culture to be much more clear, successful in this region for our application. And one more option is Hofstede's concept of 5 cultural dimensions, which we can take into account. This is also famous, how to say, usability, maybe not designer, QA, so who is working on testing, focusing on the usability, and he provided his own vision for first 4 dimension, and then after working with Asian country, he added the 5th one. So what does it mean? The power distance. It means that its extent to reach the less powerful members and maybe groups accept the power that it is distributed unequally. And that's also influence, for example, if we're talking about your site, do we focus maybe on some authority, certification, expertise on our, for example, site? Do we highlight this? Also, individualism and collectivism, it's big difference between USA, USA and Europe. For example, it's more individualistic cultures than, for example, Asian, Indian one. It's more where it's collectivism. That's mean it influence when they are interacting with your application. They also think it's for individuals, or it can be something good for like whole people to the society. Uncertainty avoidance, it's mean that the people, how they feel when something is unknown for them. Sometimes it can be very uncomfortable, and in this case, they try to avoid this, and maybe we need to provide more details, how to return something, what do they order, and maybe how they can avoid making mistakes, or how is it obvious how to recover if they made any mistakes. About masculinity and femininity, it's mean how the culture see the role of man and the woman in their culture, in their society, and it also sometimes may influence the way how they will use it. And the last one, long-term and short-term orientation, it's mean, do we build the relationships with our customers for long-term? Do we, as for example, it's much more important for Asian countries that we will have customers for a long time. We build these relationships when for example, Americans users or the European one, they usually can maybe look more for short-term orientation. And planning for international testing, how to do this. So first we need to decide where we need to do the test. Now we have a small list of techniques. For example, we can make some usability testing, review surveys. For example, we can make, especially for usability testing, to conduct some test sessions. We need to understand where we will do it. So there is one option is to visit the country where your users are living. So it's like testing in the country where your users are. And it also have their advantages and disadvantages. Of course, main advantages that you will be able to know more about culture. You will have ability, especially if you have the same language, to talk with the customers, to talk after customers. You will have much more information. And if you also test it in the people's home, you can know maybe more, learn about their environment. And if you're testing in a lab or a room reserved, you also can see a lot of people in a day, for example, and work near them. But the main disadvantages for this, that of course, is a budget to visit any country, and it also can be the jet lag, time. Maybe if you're working with your team, it can be some maybe time zones problems, and also it can be the language barrier, especially if you don't speak in English or not English, you're not speaking in their language, native language. Maybe some cultural barriers, so it which can not allow you to work as you planned. And one more option is when we can test remotely. That's mean that we will make online sessions of testing. For online sessions, we have our advantages is, of course, we can take a lot of interviews. So we are not limited in amount of, for example, we have a business trip for usability testing for 1 week. Of course, we can remotely, we can do it longer or much more offer with a lot of countries, not only one. And other advantages is that your participant can take from home, maybe be more confidence of they can share their screen and you can see the other application which they use, so it also can be useful sometimes. And and you can test, for example, schedule a lot of sessions on maybe appropriate time, but again, it's one of the disadvantages that it can be a time zone difference. It can be hard because it can be day for your user, but night for you, and you need to wake up in the middle of the night and to conduct this usability test. And sometimes it's hard to use the body language to see it because sometimes people can maybe not say what they feel about this, but you can see definitely how they behave, their mimics changing, and we can catch something using a webcam, but maybe not everything. So part of this we will lose during remote testing. It can be some internet problems, some technical issues appears during this session. And also it can be sometimes you need any interpreter, translator to understand what they say, because especially if it's non-English speakers. And also we have such testing options as we can conduct testing, like you can conduct testing yourself. So we can do it when we were limited in the budget. Maybe this is the best option, so we can try to do it. But we can also ask testing for help from local resources, for some maybe people who are living in the country, for help to, in some cases, is this the best way, because not always it's easy. Because sometimes we will talk about choosing the moderator. Sometimes age and even male or female of the moderator can influence on the results of usability testing. And hiring a local vendor for the testing is also option when we have enough budget to hire someone who can help us to conduct usability testing from their perspective. They better know maybe some cultural differences too. And what we need when we prepare it, when we know where to conduct this testing, we need to structurizing our test protocol, localize our scenarios. It means that we need to match using patterns. For example, we need to translate it, if possible, to native language, if they will conduct it in native language. We also need adapt it, for example, if some person, or if you test some application for the ATMs, in the way you can take the cash from your card. So if we will propose a scenario to do it with small pieces, it can be okay for example, European. But for Chinese, it's maybe more common. For Chinese people, it's more common to have the whole salary of like right away from the one transaction. So, and it can be not very appropriate to ask them to do it like with small parts. They will be little bit confused why to do this because it's not common for them. So that's why we need to adapt our like localizing scenarios and structuring the test protocol. One more option that we need to localize the questionnaires. That when we ask people, if possible, but even if we do it in English, so about vocabulary concerns, you need to take a look to think about maybe some words can be too complicated for them. Maybe we need to replace it. For example, try to simplify your English language as much as possible. Questions about others. It's also a good option. For example, in some cultures, it's not okay, not comfortable to talk about their feelings, especially around, like not at home, but in some social places. So that's why it can be also not comfortable for them. So we can ask to talk about how their friend, brother, sister will feel using this application, and they will be maybe much more open to tell their thoughts if they talk not about themselves but about someone else. A response skill display is you can see on the picture that it can be from one study in India. They faced with the problem that after, if they use some like typical differential scale for their response, it can be okay to do it. How to say that in India they usually you choose some edge cases, for example 1 or 7, and very rare use something in the middle, and then they think about what can be the problem and starting using a different scale, for example looking like a radio volume control, and after that the responses will change and they will have much more results in the middle about some usability feedback and what makes something usable. So it's also a little bit strange, but even usability aspects may be different for other people. That means that what good for usability, for example for Danish people, they more, or European one, they focus more on effectiveness, efficiency of the application, while one study has shown that for Chinese, for example, the fun and satisfaction much more important usability parameter than efficiency. So what can be strange for us, but we also need to take it into account. And how to organize sessions, maybe last thoughts about it, also what can influence it. Sometimes maybe you can ask not only one person for a usability review, you can do it with, for example, for 2 people, because for individual usability tests it's more common against for Europe and USA, but sharing thoughts with a friend, it can be more comfortable for some Asian cultures, for example. And also choosing think loud or retrospective call. For example, we have one of the option when that user do something during their resolving their task, then it would be good to ask think loud. They commenting what they think, what problems they faced or no. So they process how they do this task. But it can be a problem for some, especially if it's a non-English speaker to do it, or you need again spend time with interpreter help to you, or sometimes it's better, or it can be not comfortable in several countries just to this think aloud, and that's mean that the retrospective call sometimes better that when we already conduct the interview and then we ask them, maybe make a video and look it together and then ask their thoughts, that not right away, and select appropriate moderator. It can be hard for some cultures. It's definitely, for example, in India, it's better to choose a man, and it's better to choose maybe a man from the India to be a moderator, just because during the cultural difference, they may, tell you as just from the respect for you. They may tell only maybe good aspects, but not tell the problems. So, and when you have moderator from India, they can be much more open to share their real thoughts. And I guess it depends on age, on on other factors where based on which we can think for each culture which moderator can be better. And they're ready for pleasant scenarios. Be ready for this. That's mean that you're expecting, for example, one person, they can come with someone else, they can come with child, they can come, for example, if it's Arabic country, the woman can come only for someone from man. So you need to think, for example, if you rent some test lab, maybe to space where the other person can wait, or allow, or be ready for this, like allow to stay, be ready for this, maybe prepare something, and maybe you need to spend more time for greetings. Maybe you need even book more spaces between books your sessions, just because there are some cultures where they can come in time, but in some culture they can come when they think that it's better to come, but exactly not at the same time. So just to not be confusing, you need to take it into account too. So for short summary, I would like to say that it's really sometimes hard to understand not only international users, even people in our countries. So we need to try to more, observe how the people behave, little bit, spend some time, even if it can be, we don't need a huge amount of people, even it can be 5-10 sessions, for example, for each country if possible, but it would be, anyway, it would be better just to think that how our user can behave, or maybe they also have the same important values for them as for us, but it's not exactly always. So just more learn more about usability. I think maybe try to communicate to your project team members, product owners, that is also important point. Let's take it into account. Let's try to involve maybe more commands to check usability. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And waiting for you in Slack channel for questions. Thank you. Bye.